Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, broadcast out of the beautiful Monticello, Maine in Aroostook County. It's also heard on IPMNation.org, Saturday afternoons at 1:30 p.m. It's a rebroadcast of the previous show. And that's an online 24-hour news source based out of Concord, New Hampshire. And I just learned recently that WBCQ is available in tunein.com, and it's been available for quite a long time. So if you go to tunein.com and punch in where it says search, you punch in WBCQ, you can listen to the programming on, I think, all three bands, AM, FM, and the shortwave, several shortwave bands I have there. So glad to hear that. Before we do have a guest, hoping that he'll be calling in a few minutes, would be Pastor Bruce Wall. But before that, I just want to mention our summer camp coming up in July 2nd to the 9th, and we've just been making plans to have a great camp this year. Well, every year it's a great camp, but we have some instructors, guest instructors for the first time, as well as some of them have been back for the last several years, and we're busy with that and getting some great response from people. You can go to our website to learn more about the camp, and www.campconstitution.net, and there'll be all kinds of great information about the camp. You can visit our YouTube channel, and we advocate or suggest that you subscribe to it. The YouTube channel has a lot of our activities throughout the year, and also at the camp itself. You can do a playlist and see what we did last year, and classes, and the recreational activities, and the historic sites, etc. And we also have the applications all available for download. And we also tell people that we've never turned away a worthy camper or family for lack of funds, and we hope that we don't have to start to do that. I also want to just encourage you to visit our Sam Blumenfeld archive. Sam was a pioneer in the homeschool movement, and he had quite a great ministry. And when he passed away, he left us his library, and we created the archives. And we just got word that I think March was the most views, and we got about 180,000 visits on the website. And in the last several months, over 20,000 downloads, mainly of his great Alphaphonics book. Well, I think Pastor Bruce Wall is on the line. Are you there, Pastor?
Yes, I am. I am here.
Well, I'm glad you're on there. And by the way, I don't know if you knew of Sam Blumenfeld, but he was very active with the White House in Roxbury. They used his Alphaphonics, and I got a chance to meet some of the good people there prior to his passing. So, instead of me giving the listeners a long introduction, why don't you just tell people a little bit about your background? I know you're born and raised in Boston, and you've been a pastor for many years. So, just give the listeners a little biographical sketch of yourself.
Well, I have, as you just indicated, born and raised in Boston, pastored for 24 years, still pastoring the same church after 24 years, Global Ministries Christian Church in Dorchester. I am a retired clerk magistrate for 26 years at the Boston Juvenile Court in downtown Boston, and I am a founder of Boston's first gospel FCC-approved gospel radio and television station.
What's the call signals there so people can, and also any kind of information people may want to learn more about your church if they live in the area or like to visit? And also, I think you live stream too, don't you? So they can get your radio, your shows, and et cetera online as well.
Right. So the call letters for the FM station is WBPG LP 102.9 FM radio. Our webpage, which has all our information, is www.bostonpraiseradio.tv, www.bostonpraiseradio.tv. And the church address is 670 Washington Street in Dorchester, Mass., zip code 02124.
And that's right in Codman Square.
Right in the Codman Square
section. Right in the Boston
city of Boston. Yeah.
Yep. And, well, you've been, of course, you're pretty well known, not just in the inner city, but I'd say all over the state of Greater Boston. You've had a great ministry dealing with gangs and helping those with addiction problems. And I know you know my good friend Dr. Kishore, who's been quite an asset in that regard. But lately, there was what really got my attention, and you invited me to participate, and I'm very pleased that you did, the Save Our Parking Lot or Save Our Lot campaign. So tell the listeners a little bit of background about this lot. And, it's interesting. You think, well, what's a little parking lot in one little neighborhood in an awful big country? But, folks, I know this show is broadcast all over the world, and people can say, hey, that's happening in my neighborhood. I don't care what country you're in or what state you're in. These things are happening all over the place. So,
right,
if you could.
Right. Well, the issue, as you say, is larger than just a parking lot, but there's a parking lot that accommodates 50 automobiles across the street from the church. And many years ago, when I first came, it was an abandoned lot that had the frame of a store, and also it had a house, an unoccupied house on the lot. The drug dealers would use the house and that area to sell their drugs and run from one corner to the next. And we were actively fighting 10 blocks around our church. We said 10 blocks around our church would be gang, drug, and crime-free. So we took that project on. A person was killed in the abandoned house, and I began to work with Mayor Menino, and he basically gave our church site control of that property for well over 20 years. And we to maintain it, to insure it, and just to make sure that the guys that are parking on the lot, everyone's doing the right thing.
Now, that was your fence you put around the lot?
No, it's not our fence. The fence around the lot is something that the city did. The city has been putting fences around, and about over the 20 years, whenever the fences are busted, car backs into it, whatever, we talk to the city, they come back. They've been keeping the lot up. It's been, out of all the lots that you see in the city of Boston, this is one of the best well-kept lots, but because we're focused on it. And so we learned that the city wanted to have an RFP request for proposals created for that lot. There was talk about developers coming in and putting an upscale boutique or putting upscale apartments, affordable apartments, and the term affordable apartments could mean many different things. It doesn't mean that it's going to be for lower income. And so we began to see the signs.
The question is affordable for whom? To whom?
Right. That's the issue. And so we began to see the signs of gentrification coming to Carpenter Square, similar to the rich folk moving from the suburbs back into the city and pushing the poorer, lower people on the lower economic level, just pushing them out. And we see that happening. And so we would determine, we needed to keep the lot because the lack of the lot, the parking, would mean that a lot of the businesses would dry up because people wouldn't have a place to park to go patronize their businesses. The churches would have to move out because there'd be no parking for their parishioners. The agency representatives would be concerned because the people who work at the Carpenter Square Health Center and other agencies in the area would not have adequate parking. And they're putting up resident parking only signs, which means you can park for a couple hours, and after that, you're going to have a ticket. So,
right.
As we've seen in downtown Boston and Lower Roxbury, now called South End, when I was growing up, I didn't want to be caught in the South End by myself. And today, people are eating their meals on the sidewalk. There's valet parking in the South End. It's a whole new area, but you do not see any people on the lower economic level living there. They're just being pushed out, and the gentry's coming in and saying, we want to work in the city, or we already work in the city, but we're tired of traveling from the South Shore and the North Shore. We want to live right around our jobs. And so that means that if they come in, others have to go. And we're seeing churches in the South End sell their property and move out to Randolph and to Stoughton and out, just completely out of Massachusetts. And so we did not want to see that happen. So it's not just a parking lot. It's the symbol of what the parking lot represents.
Now, how have there been any proposals by developers to buy the lot from the city at this point, or is it just in the planning stage or the exploratory stage?
I think what the city does is that the city begins to have meetings with people to find out first, is there going to be any pushback? And so the city brought me in and had a meeting just with me all by myself. And I was very nice and cordial and engaging in the meeting, and I was not a rabble-rouser in the meeting at all. When I left the meeting, I said they were feeling me out. And so I had a meeting with a group of residents, about 100 residents. We met at the church, and I told people what had happened and said they're going to be talking to a number of us. What do we want to do? And 95% of the people in that room said, we want it to remain a parking lot, but not as it is. We're all talking about upgrading the parking lot where the city comes in and puts lights in and puts the white lines and basically paves the ground and makes sure that the snow is removed. And they've done that all around that area. And so we know that they can do it. And so then started the game of the city going to agency representatives or the development corporations and beginning to silence them because they are dependent upon the city for funding and for a number of different things. And so the next thing that the city does is that it goes and it tries to neutralize agency reps and people who could be standing with the community, and then the elected officials have to choose their sides. And it's my understanding that the elected officials in that area have not landed their plane to say, this is what they say, we support the community. Whatever the community wants, that's where we'll go. You interpret it this way. If 99% of the people want an upgraded parking lot, but 3 want development, they're going to say, the community wants development, we're going with those 3.
Yep. And I guess when it's first off, the city can sell it for a nice chunk of change.
Oh,
the second thing is they're going to get revenue, tax base. They're probably going to put I don't know how many units there, and they're looking at a lot of money where they sell it if it's just a parking lot. But the city, if it was my private lot, okay. If it was a corporation, you sell it to the highest bidder. Generally speaking, that's
right.
But
you make money, it's yours. Right.
Yeah, the city shouldn't be in the business of making money. They really shouldn't be in the land-owning business, with some exceptions, of course. And, I know my take would be let them sell it to you folks, or create a nonprofit entity to do it. That would be the ideal situation. And the city does that. They did that with the Boston Islamic Center, and they gave them quite a sweetheart deal. Why can't they give you a sweetheart deal? And I think the money would be there too. I don't know what that lot may be worth. Do you know what it's worth at this point? As far as
I'm hearing terms that we could be talking $10 million, very easy, with the development of that lot. And so again, the protest march, the protest that we had the other day was a way of ratcheting up, letting the city know that we are not going away, and it's also neutralizing the agency heads and the CDCs because they're going to be very quiet because they don't want to get caught in the middle of the community and City Hall. And we said that the next thing that we would do if the city doesn't talk with us is that we're going to bring it down to the mayor's office and to Andrea Campbell's office, who is the city counselor for that district.
And by the way, contrary to the myth that you can indeed fight City Hall, and again, I know the Customs Tower. I think the city of Boston bought that from the federal government for $1, if I'm not mistaken, and now it's owned by the Marriott. So somebody made a lot of money. That skyscraper was the first one in Boston. I'm sure it was worth a little more than $1. So, and the federal government is not in the business of being real estate agents. So okay. It's surplus property. We'll give it to the city for nothing. And there was a house that was there, and then there was a business. These were privately owned. No doubt the owners foreclosed, and now it becomes the city's property. It's not like the city's losing $10 million on the deal if they give it to you or sell it to a not-for-profit or something, or even let the church take it. But there's no way you can church. I don't think there are too many churches. You're just you're independent. You're an independent church. You're not affiliated with any other churches.
Right. Most of the churches in the area do not have that type of finances. Most churches in that area have about 100 or 60 members, and they're basically just hanging on. None of us have the financial resources. Our church is debt-free because I have been very careful about taking loans out and doing the kinds of things that could bankrupt the church. So we do not have that kind of money. But I also know that the city could, because the city years ago under Mayor Menino, the city was talking about leasing it to us for $1 a year for 99 years. They can create whatever sweetheart deals that they want to make. They can do anything they want to do. The problem here is I, as an individual, I'm not going to be purchased. I'm not going to be bought by a piece of property. So I'm not in a situation where they'll say, we'll give you the property and you just be nice to all of us downtown Boston.
Right.
I can't live that way.
No, that's right.
I'm going to call things what they are and stand up for the community. And so, again, we do not know where this is going. I did have a meeting with the Boston Transportation Department on Friday to engage them, and I'm having a meeting on Monday with the Department of Neighborhood Development. They're the ones who have custody of the property. So the Department of Neighborhood Development could transfer the property to the Boston Transportation Department because DND, Department of Neighborhood Development, their role is to sell properties, to get rid of it, is to develop it. So if it stays with them, it has to be developed. If it goes to the Boston Transportation Department, they can create the municipal parking lot, and it will be a sweetheart deal for the community.
And this is something, I noticed, though, when I was on Washington Street, they have the bike pass. You've noticed that's probably been there the last couple of years. And
Yep.
I don't remember one bike going by me the hour and a half I was there. Not one bike. And
you're not going to see many. We don't see many bikes.
No. Little Avenue has the bike lanes as well. And so it's almost as if the city is adopting these policies to discourage car travel. You see it in Manhattan.
Correct.
You see it in pretty much all over, many big cities and even mid-sized cities. Boston is not too big compared to New York, Chicago, but bigger than Portland, Maine. But you see that, and it's almost as if the policies, we don't want people driving. Now, I'm sure many of your members walk to church, many of them, but some of them are driving. And let's face it, you have a family. You're not going to hop on a bus. It's not always convenient to do that, and the bus is scheduled at 10. And if you're there late at night or what have you, it makes life much easier. And the policies are to get people off the bikes, out of the cars and into bikes and what have you. I can't imagine my whole family biking to church. We go to church. It used to be 2 miles away, a mile and a half. Now they moved to Canton. Now we got to go to Canton. I'm not going to ride a bike to Canton. It's not happening. And that's why they lowered the speed limits too, because people are getting clipped as more people are riding bikes. And I've got nothing, and I'm sure you don't either, have nothing against riding bikes, but you live in the Hyde Park section. I live in West Rockland. You're going to ride a bike from Hyde Park to Dorchester? Probably not very...
But it's not only that. It's that, again, a lot of the members who we used to be a local church where most of the members lived around the church. That's changed. A lot of our members have been relocated to Randolph and Brockton, and so a lot of our folk are on the South Shore. And so they have to come in by way of car. People are not going to be doing that in the cold, coming to church on Sunday mornings on a bus. That doesn't work.
And it's interesting. You growing up in Boston, and I grew up in Boston, still live in Boston, and I lived in Hyde Park most of my life. And where I am now, I'm in a family, the house that my wife grew up in. There's no way that we could afford to live here if it weren't for the fact that my mother-in-law bought this house in the 70s. The rent around here is, I can't understand, unless you're, and there's professional people moving in, and that's all good. It's vibrant now, but the people who aren't making that kind of money, where do they go? And you see the same problem in cities like San Francisco, New York. You just can't afford to live in the neighborhood you grow up. And even in South Boston, I haven't been to Amrine's restaurant in about 20 years, and I went there recently, and it looked like a yuppie fern bar. I said, my goodness.
Right.
Japanese sushi. I said, this is not the South Boston that was, 20 years ago. And and from your perspective, your church, the value of the property of church would go up if they built this but that's not what it's about. And I'm sure some of the people who own their own homes. And what, by the way, do you know the percentage of homeowners in your particular section of Boston? I know it's probably hard to say exactly.
I don't have those stats, but I can tell you this, that if you're standing in front of the church and looking across the street, a lot of the people, that's mixed apartments and individual homes on Torrey Street and on Oakwood Street. But if you, behind the church is what we call Ashmont Hill. And Ashmont Hill is the more affluent section of Carpet Square where everybody there owns their homes.
Owns their homes. So, and you, for example, my father bought a house in Hyde Park, $17,000 back in 71 to 72. You can't have your wall. You can't have your house painted for that price anymore. So the value, and it's a good thing in some respects, but it prices people out, and then you have to and it's not very environmentally friendly when the people of lower incomes have to move to Brockton and Randolph and other places then they have to work in the city, so they're coming in, they're commuting in. I mean, that sort of defeats the purpose of this, to some extent. Right.
Well, there's another piece to this too. So when you have crime out of control in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, the housing prices plummet. They go down. And people who are afraid sell their houses at a lower value. When the gentry comes in and the police decide to move the crime from those areas, then the property values go up. And that's what happened in the South End. So people were selling their houses, their brownstones, for $20,000, for $15,000, and the housing stock went down. The crime, people didn't want to live there. The gentry came in, purchased the property. The police put the protection, and the public safety issue changed there. And now that stuff is worth those places are worth $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million. The same's going to happen here. People are selling their homes for less money, running out of the community because of the crime, and when the gentry comes in, it will all change.
I drive through Boylston Street by Fenway Park, and I remember as a young boy, most of the homes were brownstones, and now it looks like Midtown Manhattan. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
You've got these 20-story. So, again, I like the idea of some development, and I'm not in favor of, clamping down on people who want to, make money. I think it's a good thing. But I'm looking at the character. It's no longer a neighborhood. You got these huge high-rises. And in Westwood, Massachusetts, they like to center these things around commuter rail stations. They got a little village there, and it just strikes me as so sterile. There's no sense of neighborhood. People don't know. You don't know the local policeman. You don't know you hop on the commuter rail. You come back. All the shops are there. The grocery stores there. You don't really have to know anybody. And I think, is this the future of our nation? Is this really what we want? These kinds of.
If you look at the commuter rail by Talbot Avenue and Mattapan, I was downtown one day and I said, I'm gonna go to church. So let me get on the new commuter rail, get off at Talbot Ave, and just walk up. So I went down and I said, gee, there's nobody here. I'm the only one here standing. Maybe I missed the train. Maybe the train just came by and picked up anybody. And so I looked at the schedule. It ran every 4 hours. So I said to myself,
not very convenient.
I said to myself, this is crazy. But it's because the commuter rail is not being built for the people who live in the area now. It's being built for those people who will live in the area in 10 years from now. So again, down the street on Dunbar and Washington Street, 2 blocks going south, 2 blocks from the church, there's another vacant lot that the city has taken over, and they're building, quote unquote, the developers building affordable housing. Now, we didn't say anything about that. We allowed that to happen. And so there are 2 major lots. One, the city sold it. It's being developed. Good for them. Now, you take one, let the community take one. It's not that we're anti-development. You are developing. 2 blocks down the street, you are putting apartments. 2 blocks down the street. Now give us this one.
Well, let me ask you. I want to be involved as much as I can. If there's any hearings, please. Because I'm in touch with you. If listeners want to, and again, you say one little parking lot in one little neighborhood, but it's a national issue. I'm sure people listening to this say, yeah, same thing's happening here, and it's not necessarily inner cities too. It's suburban towns that are facing this. Here in West Roxbury, it's one of the more nicer neighborhoods, quotation marks. They're doing the same thing here. You see these developments, what used to be maybe a 1 or 2 story building, a apartment or the store. Now it's 5 or 6 stories. Just around the corner from us used to be a Knights of Columbus. They moved out. They saw, and now you got 20, 25 units. So parking is very challenging. I think that we have a parking lot, but a lot of people don't, and the quality of life does diminish a little bit when this happens. And they're nice apartments. I don't know what they're getting for them, and it's a 2-minute walk to the commuter rail. So it seems to be when it comes to getting building permits, if you're within a 5-minute walk from the commuter rail, you've got some golden property there. And
right.
But
I could not see myself living in the South End, pulling up at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and you cannot find a parking spot in front of your house. You can't. No. And some of the places that they're building, it costs you $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year to buy a parking spot.
It's amazing. Again, if you're making high end of 6 digits, it's no big deal. Like I have a friend in Manhattan, she's on the Upper East Side, and she said she's a little well-to-do, I guess. So she said like her parking spot like $50,000 a year. I says $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little bit, but what I make before taxes, I don't know how you can do it. So
right.
So again, give us your. Oh, by the way, I want to mention you have a school out of your church too.
Right. Now, the school isn't our school. It's the Cross Factor Academy. It's a school that came to us, and they needed a site, and we allowed them to use our church. It's been a 3-year relationship, and it's great having them there. And they've created a vision. I've always wanted to have, our church has always wanted to have a school, but we could not step into that for many reasons. So that's why we were open to letting somebody else come in and do it.
Well, I'd be glad to see that. And by the way, you have a beautiful church building and a great history. When you go, I visit your website and you pay respect to the history of that building. What went on there before, and I think it's wonderful. And so again, your contact information. If people like to learn more about this issue, I think your Facebook page is probably the best place to go.
Right, Facebook. We have mostly everything on Facebook. We're not putting much of this on the church's webpage at all. But it's on their Facebook. It's at Pastor Bruce Wall is on Facebook.
And you actually had a number of people that spoke at the rally.
Right.
Reverend, was it Reverend Ron Bell or Pastor Ron Bell?
Right. It's it's Elder Ron Bell. We also had Minister Priscilla Flint Banks, and we have Evangelist Mary Franklin, who happens to be running for mayor. And so, we have a number of people that are coming in, and our radio station has helped us. It's given us the vehicle to be able to communicate. Plus, we do a lot of YouTube videos, and we send them. Every broadcast is recorded on and sent up to YouTube, so people can always go back and take a look at them. And we send the links out to our mailing list, and we send the links out on Facebook and Twitter. We're broadcasting on Facebook and Twitter and Periscope and TuneIn and Shoutcast and Audio Now, 26 different platforms we're broadcasting on right now. So we're getting the information out.
How did we survive without social media before? I mean, it was just 10 cents in a payphone and an envelope.
I said to somebody the other day, years ago, when I sent out a press release, I had to get in my car and drive to every single television station to deliver the press release.
And drop them off, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor Bruce, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. And, folks, thank you for listening. You've been listening to Camp Constitution Radio on WBCQ The Planet. Until next week, God bless.
Bye-bye.